There's increased public agitation. There's been occasion for the political leadership to appear to beg the military to stay in the barracks. There's near in-house coup. Are these whipping Akufo-Addo to reality, to rise to urgent solutions for the economic crisis that's got everybody uncertain, hungry, and thinking if they made the right choice, voting him into office? Sarah Adjoa Safo, how long will she remain MP and draw salary while absent from the country and absent from work? The public appears obviously disappointed in Parliament for not being decisive on the issue. I'm Samson Lardy Anyenini, and this is Newsfile. We'll be right back to deal with the vexed matters. Welcome back. This is Newsfile. It's your most authoritative news analysis platform, and here on Newsfile, as always, we put Ghana first. I'm your host, Samson Lardy Anyenini, and here's my take. No empty slogans on Sunday, Mr. President. In the news, former MPP MP and anti-corruption crusader PC Apia Ofori is urging a vote of no confidence in the president rather than the focus on Ken Ofori-Atta. It will appear the public has already cast that vote if Parliament won't. The president has been booed and angered to curse and tell people literally that he didn't force them to vote for him. That's after years of begging them to vote. 80 MPP MPs, that's about 59% of the majority side, boldly broke ranks to publicly tell the president to sack the finance minister and his deputy, or they will not support any business he brings to the hung parliament. That's serious trouble. There is a motion of censure all NDC MPs must vote for to compel the president to sack Ken. Any NDC MP who disobeys the three-line whip is doomed. NPP's Kwame Pianim, the renowned economist, says IMF negotiations are not going well and insists Ken Ofori-Atta must leave before he destroys Ghana. He says he's done better for himself by doing a lot of borrowing. Fix the Country, Martin Pebu, are mobilizing citizens for a Kumi-Prekon Reloaded demonstration to demand the president's resignation. Occupy Ghana demands a lean and mean government. The Citizens Coalition held a hashtag Nanado Must Listen press conference. President Mahama says the opposition NDC prefers to offer solutions and not gloat over the crisis. He and some experts insist it's a crisis largely due to incompetence of the Akufo-Addo government. President Akufo-Addo, who was touring the country, touting his good works, but getting booed by people the Ochihene describes as villagers, witches, and wizards, had cause to encourage the army to remain loyal to the democratic project. He says he's counting on it. He will be speaking to the nation tomorrow, and that will be after an emergency retreat, meeting with his cabinet, bankers, forex traders, market women, and various industry players. But will his address get to turn things around the way John Mahama's gave an instant boost to the Gari and beans or gobe industry yesterday? I hope and pray many Ghanaians are also looking forward that it will not be yet another time for sloganeering, empty slogans. The celebrated leader of Singapore, he is hardly referred to as a former prime minister, but almost always referred to as a leader. And that is for good reason. Lee Kuan Yew says that, quote, when you reach your limit, there are two ways out of that box that you are in. One is to reach new resources by either capturing territory or trading. He says to capture territory, you have to use force, and you must win or you are captured. This is where we find ourselves. We must win or be reduced to subhuman. What he refers to as force, I say, includes new revolutionary ideas extraordinarily required for a not ordinary situation set to wreak so much havoc on this country. Extraordinary times call for extraordinary solutions. Lee Kuan Yew rallied his people around his vision for a country without natural resources. Singapore, no natural resources. When he sought help, he was told to consider the production of fish hooks. He said all his country had, and that was a fact, was that its human resource. Quote, if a thing works, let's work it, unquote. That was his declaration. That's how he moved his country from a third world to first world. Quoting the Bible and shouting, "These two shall pass," solves nothing, Mr. President. These extraordinary times require extraordinary solutions led by a demonstration of extraordinary leadership. Tomorrow, may your speech tell Ghanaians that you are an authentic leader and not one who has championed sloganeering and politics and getting angry when the people are giving you feedback about where you have taken them to. And that is my take. We'll be right back with my guest to get to the vexed matters.
These gentlemen, who had just finished consuming their breakfast of banku and soup when the news team got to the chop bar, stated how they had been very tactful with the amounts they spend on food daily.
Currently, if I chop in the morning, I don't chop again. I'll wait till the evening around 6, 7, and I just eat something small. Because the way things are going, if you say you'll be eating in the morning, in the afternoon, in the evening, hey, you can't even pay your rent. So currently, if I eat in the morning, I don't take in anything. So in the evening when I close and I get home, I just get something small. Then I get.
First, none to so Adaka them says 600 as any 500. Baby, I'm saying to no. To me, Adaka no quite 12,002. To me, it's Yama say no customers no a swati. If they say only cut say first now, be a bedroom or babetage and then idea.
Auntie Chucho is saying that she was in the markets on Saturday, and a box of tomato which she used to buy for 600 cedis is now being sold at 1,200.
Just last month was sold, it was 6 cedi, the Prema. Now it's 13 cedis. Why?
And so Kwesi was sacked. You know, this lady who is prime minister lives on the same street with Kwesi Kwarteng. Same street in London. They went to the same school from their childhood. But wrong is wrong. When you are wrong, I need to look in your eyes and tell you, you are wrong. That is what is killing this nation. This is the time, Your Excellency, to make changes. And those changes must be to the honor and glory of God. Our finance minister, who even though is a Christian, have failed miserably. And I am telling Your Excellency, with all due respect, this is the time to make drastic changes. We cannot sit here when $1 is equal to 12 cedis. 12 cedis!
Don't believe in going to the IMF. How can you negotiate for that? The IMF negotiations are going badly. We cannot do it in 3 weeks. And not for the parliamentarians. They are part of the problem. All the agreements we signed getting to a level of where our debt is not sustainable. They are there. The public finance management laws are very clear. When the Minister for Finance is presenting any budget, any law, we have to bring a financial impact assessment attached to it. As the minister, as the MP, whether they look at those things. We have this unsustainable debt partly because of them. They didn't do their job. So it's not up to them now to say they are giving the minister 3 weeks. The level we have reached, we have to be serious. Either we want to tackle this problem very quickly so that within 9 months, the economy is stabilized, 6 to 9 months, the economy is stabilized, and the president has about a year, 9 months to implement some of his flagship agenda. But now, all expenditures to be suspended, except the emergency one. We demonstrate to the IMF that we are serious, we'll cut the expenditure. As I said, no flagship project is a sacred cow. We should review all of them for efficiency, for financial efficiency, and move forward. That's what we need to do. So letting somebody stay for 3 weeks when they are stuck for 5 years will not happen.
Togo, didn't COVID happen there? Cote d'Ivoire, didn't COVID happen there? Nigeria, and so on and so forth. So how come that Ghana now has the worst performing currency in the world? The president also resigned. Sovereignty resides in the people, in the preamble of the constitution, etc. Yes, so we put them there. So on the 5th of November, you will see how millions of Ghanaians would come out into the streets and to voice it out clearly to the president that he has to go. And you see, the sad thing is that the more he digs in his heels, then the more he shows that he's not a leader at all. He's not a leader. He just can't listen. He feels very entitled, which is a shame. Citizens have told you that, Master, go. Just go. It's not by force. You were begging to lead, and we listened and thought that you could lead. Now you've driven us into a deep crater, very deep crater. You know the decades it will take for us to recover from this economic doldrums it's created, and he doesn't want to go. It just shows that it's just personal aggrandizement, president. That's all that he thinks about.
Finance Minister, the Bank of Ghana, Governor, and other senior officials of the government are here, is to indicate to you a little where we've got to in the negotiations we're having with the fund, what it portends for the future of economic policy in our country, and then hopefully to have the opportunity to get your particular buy-in, because we are talking and hopefully concluding soon these important negotiations, which are going to have, and you know as well as I do, an important impact on the way forward for the Ghanaian economy in the months and immediate years ahead. So it's basically a familiarization program, and then also to hear from you what you think would be significant that you would want to hear.
Right, so you've been listening to ordinary citizens and sellers. You've heard Prophet Kofi Odro, who doesn't understand what is going on in this country. He feels that what is happening in Britain, that should be the example that we should follow. You heard Martin Pebu, who has been on a campaign to get the president himself resign and fix the country. They are all saying they are demonstrating on the 5th of November, and their mission is to get the president to simply, hang up. You heard Kwame Penim, economist, also sharing his views on what has been going on. And then President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo speaking to the press before they began a 3-day retreat together with his cabinet, and calling on various players in the industry to seek to see what they can do to help the situation. So you're welcome. This is Newsfile, it's your most authoritative news analysis platform. And this morning, I'm excited. We're joined by Dr. John Osai Kwapong. He's political scientist, democracy and development fellow at CDD Ghana. Also, Dr. Kwabena Nyako Otu, chief economist and director, Labor Research and Policy Institute, Trade Union Congress. We also have on Zoom Clara Kolega Berry Kasati. She's a lawyer. She teaches at the University of Ghana School of Law, and she's a board member of the CDD Ghana. Here in the studio, Mona Kote, managing partner, BVM Advisory Services and former Deputy Minister of Finance, and Habib Idrisu, MP for Tolong and Deputy Majority Chief Whip. I'm very sure nobody wants to be in your position at this time, particularly where within your own party and your people, there are these internal, boycotts, these rebels, yes. 80 of them.
Yes.
It must be very difficult for you.
Yeah, it's a difficult time for us.
So how do you do it as a whip? How do you go about making sure everybody is towing the line? And here you have 9% of your group.
Yeah, Samson, now it's no more 58% of the group. It's an entire group at the moment. It's a difficult time for us as a whip because you have a job in hand to satisfy your MPs. You also have a job in hand to make sure that you prosecute government business in Parliament. It's a trying moment. We'll try and see how we navigate in between.
Your MPs say that they are representing the views of their constituents. So which should take precedence? What the president told them, we are told, and now they have decided to sort of backtrack and suspend their push, or their constituents are the ones they should be listening to?
Samson, if you look at it, as members of Parliament, we are already representing our constituency. And that is the first and foremost. We understand that times are hard and difficult at the moment in the country. So when we hear the cry, this is the first of its kind in the democracy from the Fourth Republic, that a majority parliamentary caucus will actually be able to speak out against their finance minister and against their president, and also give another ultimatum that we need this demand to be met, or else we will not actually prosecute any government business. A lot of thinking went into the whole thing. That fateful Tuesday on the 25th, when 80 members of our group did a press conference to actually register their displeasure and how they are unsatisfied about the conduct of the minister responsible for finance and the minister of state at the finance ministry handling the economy and where we are at the moment. In fact, we had a caucus meeting immediately, and when we had a caucus meeting, the voice of the majority was that, look, the call was in the right direction, and I think the country needs that now. So we did agree that, okay, it's a caucus position. So we first of all said that we have a leader of our party and the president of the republic who has actually have the right by the constitution to hire or fire. So we did arrange to have a meeting with the president. When we met the president, the majority leader, Honorable Chairman Sabonsu, communicated to the president that the majority caucus in parliament position is that the finance minister and the minister of state at the finance ministry should be shown the exit door, or else we will not actually be able to do any government business. So the president appealed to us in that meeting that he appealed and also requested that we should give him some time. He has actually listened to our plea, and he also knows that things are not going on well, times are difficult, but we should give him time. The finance minister is already nose deep into the negotiation of IMF, of which we are expecting the budget somewhere on the 15th of November, which is less than 3 weeks away, or just 3 weeks away. So if that is done, then he bring in the budget, 2023 budget, and then also be able to move the motion for the appropriation. We didn't give him an answer. We said it's a caucus decision, so we didn't want to engage the president in that meeting. So we retired to consult the old lady, and for us in the majority caucus to Georgia to be able to come to an agreement. In fact, on that fateful Wednesday, we didn't do any government business. If you look at the other paper on Wednesday, of which I have a copy here, any government business was not done until the caucus took a decision. The Minister of Finance was supposed to come and lay a paper on the Procurement Act. There's supposed to be Cocoa Board supposed to also lay a paper, the social welfare. All that was standard. We only did 2 business on that Wednesday. That has to do with Pan-African Parliament and the ECOWAS Parliament, which are parliamentary business. That has nothing to do with the government. So we had a series of meetings on Wednesday as caucus to be able to agree whether we should listen to the plea and request of the president or not. So we deliberated and we said that, okay, that is okay. The president have made a request. We have only 3 weeks for the budget to come. Changing finance minister and looking at where we are, taking him out, what will happen within the economy and other things, factors that we considered. So we agree. So on that same Wednesday evening, I was the leadership. Then the leadership was taxed, led by the majority leader, the chief whip, the deputy leader. We met with the president and we communicated to him that the majority caucus have agreed to your plea and request that we'll give the finance minister time to be able to continue with the negotiation and also prepare the budget and move the motion for the appropriation, and nothing more, nothing less. So the president thanked us for that, and we said we will issue a statement. So we did issue a statement, same. I think that was Wednesday evening, right, to let the public know that we did the press conference on Tuesday. We have met with the president now. We have Giorgio, and this is the stand.
But you see, in your statement, it is not clear if your demands have merely been suspended until after we reach, a deal with IMF and the finance minister presents the budget.
No, Samson,
it does look, you say, that after he's done all these, then that will be put on the table for consideration.
No, Samson, if you read the statement, I'm trying to just get a copy. The last statement before the last paragraph, you could see that it was clear, maybe with your kind permission, that I'll just read part of it, or maybe the whole. Following the press conference held on Tuesday, 25th October 2022 by the members of the majority caucus in Parliament, demanding the removal of the Minister of Finance, Ken Ofori-Atta, and the Minister of State or at the Ministry of Finance, Mr. Charles Edibuahen, from office, the President engaged members of the caucus and requested that the issue be stood down until the conclusion of the round of negotiation with the International Monetary Fund and the presentation of the budget statement and economic policy in November 2022. And
the subsequent stood down.
I'm coming. I'll get to where I'm trying to emphasize. And subsequently, passage of the bill, after which the demand shall be acted upon.
After which the demand shall be acted upon.
Demand shall be acted upon. We were very careful.
It means what? A minute after he presents the budget, he's on his way out together with his deputy, or 24 hours after, or a day after, or 2 weeks after. What does it mean?
So the statement actually make it clear. It's a three process. Yes, he now have the backing of the majority caucus to go ahead with the negotiation with the IMF. He can come and present the budget statement on behalf of the president for 2023, and then he can move the motion for the appropriation. If these three events are done, our demand will be acted upon.
Will be acted upon.
You see, you know, if you are a lawyer of good standing, the power to hire and fire lies in the president. The other thing Parliament could do is a motion of censure, of which we need numbers to be able to get that minister out. So the president is not telling you that shelf your demand. I am not going to act or do anything about it. But our conclusion with him was that let this three process happen.
Stand it down.
I will act on it.
First, stand it down. Let the minister proceed with negotiations and present a budget by the 15th of November. And then your demand shall be acted upon. Acted upon means what? Because you do not know what his action will be on your demand.
Definitely, but you see, there are three processes going on in Parliament now.
No, we understand that clearly.
No, but I want to be
acted upon. Can acted upon mean that he will say, well, I've listened to your demand, I'm sorry, I cannot grant it. He's acted upon it.
Yes, and he can also say that, okay, now the finance minister have moved and my budget and my appropriation for 2023 is done. I have actually ceded to your demand, and then the finance minister has to go. It is also possible.
If the finance minister does not go after he presents the budget, what happens?
Then the majority caucus will then retire or be able to meet again and then be able to see exactly what we are going to do. But you see, something we need to appreciate.
If your demand, when you spoke to the president, please, let's hear the group when they gave the press conference. Please, let's hear them again, and then you answer that question. If your demand has been stood down, and then after it's supposed to be acted upon, you said if the demand is not acceded to, you will not do parliamentary business. So if from the 15th it's not acceded to, you are supposed to tell Ghanaians that this is what we are continuing. You are not going to do parliamentary business. Let's watch them again.
That as a concerned majority, we want our government to succeed. So if, for example, common fund has not been released and is affecting the performance of MPs and MMDCs who are appointed by the president, then steps ought to be taken. We need to hear from our finance minister, we need to hear from the president on steps that are being taken. Because when it comes to the removal of a minister, the constitution says you need 2/3 of members present and voting, and it's by secret ballot. From the way things are, you cannot guarantee it. You cannot. So I don't think it's in the interest of our side of government to remove our minister. But when push comes to shove, to save the party, the government that we are asking to break the eight, which I don't believe in, I believe in winning successive elections.
We are members of the majority caucus of the Parliament of Ghana, and we here so present a greater number of the said caucus. My name is Andy Apiakubi, and I am only here as spokesperson for the majority group, without more. We have had occasions to defend allegations of conflict of interest, lack of confidence, trust against the leadership of our finance ministry. The recent developments within our economy are of great concern to the greater majority of members of our caucus and our constituents. We have made our grave concern to the President through the parliamentary leadership and the leadership of the party without any positive response. We are by this medium communicating our strong desire that the President change the Minister of Finance and the Minister of State in the Finance Ministry without further delay in order to restore hope into the financial sector and reverse the downward trend in the growth of the economy. The summary of our concerns leads to a plea that the Minister of Finance, Honorable Kenneth Ofori-Atta, and the Minister of State of the Ministry of Finance, Honorable Charles Edubuahin, be removed from office. We pray that this prayer will be carried to the presidency. We thank you very much. Meanwhile, we want to serve notice, and notice is hereby served, that until such persons as aforementioned are made to resign or removed from office, we, members of the majority caucus here in Parliament, will not participate in any business of government by or for the President by any other minister. We hope that those of us of the backbench and members of the majority caucus will abide by this prayer. We are saying that if our request is not responded to positively, we will not be present for the budget hearing, neither we will participate in the debate. Thank you very much.
Right, so this is what your constituents say, at least this group, this is what their constituents say, and they have expressed that. And now that has been stood down until these three events have taken place. Back to my question. If the president acts on it, and the action on it is not positive, as Andy Appiah said, what will you do?
Something, I think we have to wait until we get there. But the most important thing is that there is a reason why the press conference was made. There is a reason why the majority caucus, for the first time in the history of our democracy, we made such move. Reason being
there are people who applauded you. They are withdrawing their applause.
No, they should not.
They are thinking that there's some shenanigans going on. This was intended to just mislead the public.
Samson, I don't think that anybody hates Ken Ofori-Atta as the minister responsible for finance. But we are not comfortable and we are not happy of the current economic situation and happening in our country. It's the same finance minister in 2017, 18, 19, 20. Nobody called for his head because everything was going on well. He inherited an IMF-driven economy, an economy that had doomsday, an economy that had public sector recruitment frozen, and he was able to do well. Have you heard
the answer to that? Have you heard the answer to that?
No.
When you raise that, what you are told about that, the reply you hear about that is that in that circumstance, the finance minister has practically done nothing. Because for the period that you talk about, he was under the IMF. That is why the economy was sailing smoothly. And right after we got out of IMF, he's plunged us into this.
No, Samson, that is not the case. So the point I want to make is that, yes, we have made this demand. We have acceded to the president's request, and it has timelines, and he will be acting for it. If it is not positive, or maybe Samson by then, I know you are a very, good Ghanaian who respect people, assuming by the 3 weeks that we have given, or by the time we are passing the appropriation bill, everything is back to normal and other things. Will people still be asking for his
Okay,
head?
so that's an interesting condition. Let me go.
So we need to be able to understand that.
Let me go to Zoom and begin with Professor Osai Kwapong. Doc, thank you very much for joining us. What do you make of what is happening within the president's own party? And there are people like Charles Rekubrobe who feel very disappointed in the conduct of the 80 MPs who said, we are speaking the language of our constituents?
Good morning, Samson, and good morning, everyone, as well. I was quite surprised when I saw that press conference, and I was because we've not seen anything like that in the Fourth Republic.
Right.
In terms of a public break with the president from members of his own party. Yes, once in a while you might get an MP here, an MP there who may say something in the public space, but as a collective group of of that magnitude, it was quite rare. And for me,
and once in a while, when you hear an MP isolated making, taking adverse positions adverse to their party, they get sacrificed. They don't come back to Parliament the next time.
Precisely, right? So this was very different. I don't know how long it had been brewing for them to actually decide that they were going to make this public break with the president of their own party. But again, I think if they look at the economic conditions and circumstances, but I'm sure they also are looking at the political consequences of the economic conditions, and I'm sure they would want to insulate themselves against any political fallout. I think that is one of the calculations, right? It's like, if you're going to go down, we will not go down with you. But if you want us to stick with you and continue to stick our heads out for you, then something has to give. So that was my initial read of that major public break with the president. What I also found very concerning, though, was that knowing the numbers already in Parliament and the difficulty, for example, with the 2022 budget, when they added the statement, we would not participate in the budget and any other government business, that was when I said, okay, this portends some real political trouble for the president. Well, subsequent to that, there was the meeting and then a report that they are holding off on those demands. And so again, my take was, okay, probably they've come to some compromise behind closed doors. The president has given them some assurances, as the Honorable said. A series of events have to happen, upon which then the president has assured them that he would act upon their...
So to demonstrate credibility, what is your expectation? If the three events, as he speaks about, mainly two events, if they happen, and then the president acts on their demand, and his acting on their demand is not positive, as in he doesn't grant their wish, what's your expectation?
Well, if he doesn't, then I would expect that the 80 who really came out publicly, they have a choice to make. Do they still stick with the president, or do they really carry out their quote-unquote threat not to participate in any government business and in the budget deliberation, which the consequences would also not be good given where we are already. I hope that whatever assurances that the president gave them, that the president will follow through on those assurances, that if really to be acted upon means whatever they asked for in terms of the removal of those two persons, that will be given. And if not, there has to be some basis upon which it is not granted. And then now it will be up to them to come back and explain to the public why they made those strong demands and issue those strong statements, and why now they are quote-unquote backtracking. So there are political calculations for both sides, and both sides would have to figure out how this can be quote-unquote a win-win situation for everybody. But I think the MPs are in a very difficult position now, because even for having agreed to wait for this time period after the meeting with the president, already you see certain questions being raised, certain questions being asked, because it looks like you gave us so much hope and now you've taken that hope away. So they are in a very difficult position and have to be very careful about their political calculus, going forward after these two key events.
Clara, what will you say? Hello, Clara. Please unmute your mic.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes, very clearly.
For me, I adopt more a wait to see. I was quite intrigued to see the 80 MPs come out because, face it, in the democracy, both the MPs and the president are elected officials. So the president has his electoral mandate to keep faith with the people, and the MPs also have their electoral mandate to keep with their constituents. Whereas the president will not be going for a second term, the MPs, I suspect most of them, would like to go back to Parliament. So they have their constituents to look up to in terms of if they want to return to Parliament. Now, yes, they have their party issues to deal with. And of course, that includes winning the bid to be the PC for your parliamentary, for your constituency, representing your party. But after that hurdle is the main election. So the MPs do have their own issues in terms of the democracy to deal with. So I was happy to see this, to see that at least the MPs are also thinking of their mandates to return to Parliament if they so desire, or to represent the interests of their people. The public outcry isn't hidden from anyone, and they haven't been insulated from it as well. They had a responsibility to their constituents and to Parliament as a body to also at least take a stance and see what they can do. So I will wait to see what happens, and then I would draw a firm conclusion. But for now, I'm quite intrigued and quite interested in the way our democracy is working, that all the arms of government have seen that there is some responsibility, at least the two arms in this case, the executive and the legislature, particularly the legislature, that they have seen that there is need to do something because they do need to go back to their constituents at the end of the day.
As far as what we know in the public is concerned, it does appear as the majority view. And if the elected officials will respect the views of the majority, the finance minister should not be keeping his job.
Yes, well, I have found it interesting that we've actually gotten to this point. Because in a democracy, as we are all aware, it is the president's mandate, both legally and politically, to appoint ministers, of course, with the necessary approval processes, to assist him to achieve his electoral mandate.
The president serves at the will of the people.
He does. But I find it interesting in this case because I thought that, to begin with, the president should have considered whether, given the current economic situations, that is what he expected. Because I would expect that he appointed the finance minister to help him achieve a certain goal for the economy. In the economic circumstances that we are, is that the goal for which he brought the finance minister on board? So I actually expected the president to make the first decisions at the point as to whether this is what he wants. Because if we are going to be quite objective, if the finance minister isn't doing what the president wants him to do, the president has the power to fire him or to revoke his appointment. If the president has not done that, it's a reasonable conclusion to draw that this is what the president wants him to do. Then, like you said, it comes back to the people. The people then have to decide whether this is what they want when they elected the president. And the people are speaking. Both legally and politically, it is in the president's own interest.
Well, just a week ago, the president told all of us to our faces that these are his best performing ministers. They include the finance minister, Alan Shermanting, the roads minister, the employment minister, and the food and agric minister. So they clearly know that Ken Ofori-Atta is one of the president's favorite. And that's why all the calls over these months appear to have fallen on deaf ears. Will you deem this group credible if he doesn't act on their request after the budget is presented?
For credible, that's why I say I would wait to see what unfolds in the...
That should be a judgment you should be able to make now. That this is their demand, and they've been asked to suspend the demand until certain events have taken place, and then it will be acted upon. They said it must be positive action, which we all should know means they should go.
I started by saying I find it intriguing, and because, as I noted, of course, I am not unminded of the political effect. So I wanted to see whether this is a political gimmick or this is real. And that's why I said it's intriguing. So to a very large extent, I would adopt a wait-and-see approach as to what happens after the negotiations and what they come back to tell me. Then I would decide on whether this was genuine or this was more a political act to save their own seats to a very large extent and to somehow keep faith with the public and at least afford something to be discussed whilst they decide on what happens.
Okay, so if it's not acted upon positively and they still do not keep to their promise or their threat, you would deem that it was just a political gimmick?
Yes.
Okay, yes, right, let me come to Mona. I was actually thinking we could deal with this quickly and then go into the other matters, but this is also important. It was surprising. And many people felt, well, maybe our politics is changing. That the MPs do not feel that they owe their life in parliament, in the politics, or in government to the president. And then suddenly, they go and agree. Some say, well, that's how reasonable people conduct themselves. Some say, we are not at a point where you should be saying you are acting reasonable because it's long overdue. What will be your judgment of this group if their request is not acceded to and they still do not carry out what they have promised?
Thank you, Samson. My initial point is my judgment of them will be that they took a very risky gamble, number one. So, of course, they are MPs. They do report to their constituency, as everyone has said so far, and including Habib himself. But they do owe their leader, who is the current president, some respect and so forth. But one would have expected that being reasonable people, and I hear you use that term, and for me, that's where I'm coming from, reasonableness. You go to the president with very valid points because you are concerned about the future of your party. Your party's future goes beyond his presidency. You are concerned about the economy. You are concerned about your people. And yet, when he asks you to stand down and wait for an action that will take place either right after budget or after an IMF deal is concluded, and from what we are seeing, it is possible there won't be an IMF deal until early next year. So which timeline is it that you're going with? And that surprises me, talking about surprises. So I think that the MPs went to meet the president and something radically changed, which put down even their own conviction. Because when they were going, they gave us the impression that they were convinced. So what changed? Clearly, signals had to be sent to the market and to the people. You went, and now those signals are not being sent. There has to be a change of the economic team. This team is no longer credible. This is a team that has lied not only to the people of Ghana outside your party, but they've also lied to you. And the IMF has found them out. The numbers they gave, the macroeconomic numbers they gave, were not correct. You have found that out. I am also surprised that as president, when you now find out that others, external partners, have found that your numbers are not correct and credibility issues have come, you will still want to keep the manager of the economy who created the situation at post to continue the negotiations with the IMF who have found him out. Clearly, they have no respect for him.
In fact, part of the grounds they raised was that it is not tenable for Ken Ofori-Atta, who said, hell no, we will not go to IMF, to be leading the delegation in the discussions. Mr. Kwame Pianim has said almost the same thing and says what is happening portends very badly for the party itself, like you said a while ago.
Party and for the people, because we even heard Mr. Nyamike on one of your programs also saying that someone who is reluctant to go into the IMF, how can he negotiate? But for me, even more important is someone who lacks credibility. And you all found that out when the IMF negotiations began. At this point, there isn't going to be a board approval soon. It will be staff level. So it's going to be hard times because it's going to be assisting them to get to the point where a debt sustainability assessment can be correct or not. Now, for me, I wonder that these NPP MPs, 80 or more of them, and this morning we are hearing Habib saying, in fact, it's all of them who don't want the situation to continue. It's not personal, but they don't want it to continue. If all of you say this, how can one person, whether he's a big authority or not, is still one person, change all of you's mind to wait until a time when you don't even know what the response will be, when the nation is at risk. The reputation of the whole nation is at risk, and our economic future is also at risk. The people of Ghana have started to suffer. You showed some interview of people speaking about eating once a day, struggling, transport. I mean, it cuts across the nation. And yet you think you should humor the president and wait until after the budget or after an IMF deal is agreed, which could be next year, to make your decision. You have failed your constituency. To Habib and the rest of your MPs, I tell you that you have failed your constituency. And you continue to perpetuate stories and lies that Ken Ofori-Atta was doing well as minister from 2017 to 2020. That is not true. He was under an IMF program that we began, therefore he was compliant to an extent. He got out of that program and immediately the problems started. These problems are not because of COVID or Ukraine. Even the World Bank has said it. Ghana was already at risk. Even when we were leaving office, there was some level of risk. And that's why we were in an IMF program. We didn't go into the program because we were doing so well. There were problems. And that's why we went in. Ken Ofori-Atta and his team got out of it. Reckless expenditure, government expenditure, reckless signals to the markets by borrowing anyhow and showing no assets for it. And today we are where we are. You represent your constituencies and you are still humoring one man who could bring your party down. There are people in your party, I can assure you, who are not MPs, but who want to see this party continue. And even for the NDC, we want to see democracy continue. And that's why John Mahama made it clear that he also calls upon the security agencies to be loyal to the Constitution. We don't want any more coup d'etats. We want a democratic governance. And therefore, please,
But why has that call become necessary? Because we knew that some time ago when we used to have this military, adventure.
Yes, it always set us back.
Whenever there were, some inflationary issues and the economy went bad, then the military will step in.
That's right.
But we know that that's not the situation we live in anymore. Yes. So why is it that the president and President Mahama, you are all asking the military to stay back and be committed?
They're asking the military to stay back so that the democratic governance that we have journeyed on to date will continue. And it is for that reason that we ask the MPP MPs to do right, not to pretend to do right. Actually, I believe that they were not pretending. Let me take that back. They were not pretending when they started. They were really on fire. And as you said, a lot of people commended them for it. It is a pity that when they went to meet the president, they humored him and therefore stood down as he asked them to. One was expecting that they would continue. And in fact, for the sake of Ghana, because the situation now is time sensitive, Samson, the situation will not be the same by early next year. It is time sensitive. We need to act now. Right. So for them to stand down is a real pity. And we hope that they will go back.
Let's listen to Haruna Idrisu, the minority leader, on the question of censure. They have actually done a motion to censure the finance minister, as in pass a vote of no confidence in him, and after which the onus will be on the president to sort of ask him to leave. That's one. Is it possible? And do you all agree that if the president doesn't do what the majority group is seeking, then they could simply join the minority group on this vote. Let's listen to Haruna Idrisu.
I expect him to be assuring me that his side will support this, and by consensus, we'll save this country. We need to save this country, save its businesses. Businesses are collapsing, industry is collapsing, the Ghanaian citizens are reeling under unprecedented hardship. That must be your concern. But to say that there's nothing legal in this, okay, it is constitutional. Not just legal, but constitutional.
Okay, right. So that's Haruna Idrisu. Is that where you will go if they don't get the president do what they want? They should join the minority?
I believe that at this point it's about Ghana first, and therefore they should join the minority so that we can get the numbers for the censure, because clearly Ken must go. He cannot do the job anymore. When I think about the times that we as an economic management team were insulted for incompetence, for corruption, and so forth, today we see that the one thumb that did it had four fingers pointing back. Today I can say that they are clearly incompetent, they are corrupt, and they lack compassion. And it's really sad because the people of Ghana are suffering, and especially the MPs. You must consider your constituencies. You're going to go back to them. You won't be MPs forever. When you go back, they'll show you where power lies. The power lies in the thumb and in the people. It's all about the people. So yes, I agree with Haruna on that.
Right. Dr. Otu, where do you stand on this? Well, people like PCRP Forex are saying that it's not the finance minister that should be the target. It's a failed president. So just get the president to resign or pass a vote of no confidence in the president, which the Constitution allows.
Thank you, Samson. Interesting times we have in this country. I think that I cannot foresee Ken Ofori-Atta being a finance minister beyond maybe the presentation of the budget. And on a personal note, if I were him, I would not even go to present the budget. There's some sense in him trying to conclude a staff-level agreement of the IMF. There's some sense in that. And as Mona said, for the board of the fund to consider Ghana's bailout, it will go into December.
Yeah, when Zambia was seeking it, it took them 2 years. I don't know where the confidence comes from Ghana that we seem to be saying, oh, we are almost there, we are almost there. And now economist Kwame Pianin says we have difficulties. Of course, we, the public, have been made to know about part of the difficulty because there have been inaccurate figures that the IMF has not been excited about.
So that's the point. Of course, the last negotiation, I think Mona can correct me. It took us, I think, 6 months or so to conclude the 2015 negotiation. And of course, this time is a bit different because the world itself recognizes the urgency of the situation for many developing countries. So maybe this time is different in the sense that people will want to speed up things to be able to save the situation for most countries and for Ghana. The situation is urgent. So concluding a staff-level agreement in the next 3 weeks would be good. But I do not really foresee him going on as a finance minister beyond November. I do not foresee that. I think that it's in his own interest to resign after the appropriation motion is moved. And I think that the MPs cannot, at this stage, tell us any other story if the president does not act on their demands positively. So that would be my take on it.
How do you expect... Yes, please go ahead.
All of these things is also coming on the heels of the already demands on the president to reshuffle the cabinet. I mean, this thing has been in the air for so many years now, for so many months, years and months. And I think that the MPs have acted boldly. They have acted not just on the current economic situation, but the pent-up feeling from their constituents that the president needs to reshuffle the cabinet. And so this is the ultimate consequence we are seeing on the part of the president refusing to listen to so many people within his own party about reshuffling.
I was asking how you expect, especially the minority side, to sit and listen to a finance minister. They have gotten a motion for censure accepted on, and which is a motion that will have to be debated. So how do you see things panning out if he goes to Parliament? That is before the motion is debated for his removal, censure.
So I'm not a political scientist, and I'm not a student of politics that well, but I think it will be difficult for the minority as it is difficult for the majority itself. And it's in that breath that I said that personally, if I were him, I would not even go to Parliament to present the budget.
If you were him, you would not even go to Parliament.
Having said that, I also recognize that the times we are in is so precarious that, and he's so deep in the IMF negotiation. Of course, people will say that what if he falls down and dies tomorrow? But he's not dead, he's there. And if he can, within these 3 weeks, get us a staff level agreement, that is almost a surety that some of the agreement can enter into the budget. It won't be bad.
The finance minister, Kenneth Foriata, when they started the discussions that the president has commandeered, was seen in an excited mood in a photograph with the president, and he tweeted, "Thank you, Nana Akufo-Addo, Ghana president, for leading today's stakeholder engagement. We continue tomorrow with our market women, Ghana employers, TUC Ghana, etc. We will arise and continue to build, and God will surely prosper Ghana again. Building Ghana together, robust recovery ahead." So TUC, you were supposed to be meeting with the group in this. There are people who are really, who are, I don't know how to say, angry, but they feel insulted that the finance minister continues to be preaching scriptures to them about recovery. People are hungry, and that's what they are concerned about.
Exactly. I agree with those people. I mean, there are no words to describe the difficulties people find themselves in. We negotiated a 7% salary increase, which was a severe portrait, very small in 2022, at a time when inflation was 9%. Today, in 2022, inflation is almost inching up to 40%. And I mean, you see, in the past when you talk about inflation, you don't see it. Today, you see it in hourly increases in prices for everything. Incomes have been completely decimated. So in these times, it's not really about sermons, and as your take mentioned, it's not about sloganeering anymore. It's about clear, tangible things you can do to stabilize the situation, to arrest the fall of the city, and to arrest the declining standards of living of Ghanaian workers. This is what everybody expects. It's not just even workers. It's all that the country expects from the president, from his ministers. It's no longer about slogans.
You just said a while ago, as if to join the group that is asking Ken to go, that his stay in office is no more tenable. How does his removal from office suddenly change the circumstances?
So it may not suddenly change the circumstances, but you see, in economics, there's something we call confidence. It's not a tangible, quantifiable thing you can build into a model. Of course, you can still build into a model, but not as a quantitative variable, as a qualitative variable. So that confidence, when so many people, including 80 members of your own parliament, are telling you that we have lost confidence, there's no way the market will regain that confidence until that person is made to go. So his exit will actually increase confidence, which has been sagging in the Ghanaian economy for whatever reason. It may be, we may all be wrong, But at least at this point in time, this is the position taken by majority of the people. And majority of MPs have agreed to that. The market is watching. So what we need to do is to give the market some confidence. In fact, a high dose of confidence in this situation.
Okay, so
it may not certainly change things, but it will give confidence to move the market in the right direction for Ghana.
All right. I suppose that is without a doubt, because even the government says the more we talk the economy down, the more things get bad. And so we should be careful, even we presenters. When I sit here and moderate my show, sometimes I get calls, be careful how you allow people to say certain things about the currency and the rest, all impact on how the currency, does well or does not do well. Except that sometimes I get very intrigued. And sometimes I almost feel insulted, because the same people who are calling you and asking you to moderate your guests so that they do not get into what they call speculation and all of these things, because it affects the economy. Not too long ago, when the NDC was in power, they would sit on the same show with you and do the same thing. And when the NDC guys told us that, be careful, what you're doing is not good for the market, they would call their bluff and say, forget about these guys, let's move on. We'll say it as it is. So sometimes it gets really insulting to me when I get these calls.
A quick response on that.
Yes.
So underlying all these difficulties in the Fourth Republic is at the nature of our politics. So if I am not in government, I just do anything and everything to bring down the economy. When the tables turn, then you begin to preach to people that please don't do that, don't do that.
But even where we do that, where we do that, there should be some major issues that we should agree that for those issues, the political divide will agree that this is how we communicate about them, because it's about people's lives.
I agree 100% with you. And that is why, as we try to offer solutions, one of the solutions we need to hammer on is the need for some level of political consensus in this country. We can't do politics with everything. It's about people's life. Unfortunately, one of the things we lack in this country is political consensus. If you find two goats fighting on the street of Accra, you investigate and realize that one of them belongs to an NDC and another belongs to MPP. There's no middle ground in Ghana. That is part of the challenge in this country.
Okay.
Please, can I make a quick comment on finance, international finance, not on politics?
Yes, and Dr. Sai Kwapong, I'll come to you on the question of the motion for censure, whether you think that the majority group would be joining them for that motion if they don't get what they deserve.
In the international markets where bonds are issued, even for government treasuries and bonds and so forth, Samson, you know that credit rating agencies use numbers and use ground intelligence to give reports, which all investors who have capital use, whether investors domestic or investors abroad. To date, the credit rating agencies have found out that this economic team, management team, have given wrong numbers, wrong meaning they have not fully disclosed all the numbers, and therefore the situation is actually different from what it really is. And in fact, it keeps unfolding. Now, with credit agencies sending out that signal, it is factored into the markets and factored into the cost of borrowing for Ghana and so forth. It has reputational risk for our nation. So indeed, even without the politics, we must be concerned that our nation is now getting this reputation as not being transparent, accurate with the numbers that we put out. And it is a dangerous precedent to set.
Okay.
Even in our time, we never gave wrong numbers. But this time, credibility is at stake. And the credit rating agencies are picking up on that. And it will reflect.
Dr. Sai Kwapong, listen to Speaker Bagwing, and then to my question quickly. And then we will take a quick break. We'll return to move to what your expectations are of the president tomorrow, as he is going to speak to the nation. We'll hear what President Mahama has been saying, Occupy Ghana, Citizen Coalition, all of them, what they have been saying to the president. And then what you expect of the president tomorrow. But let's listen to Speaker Bagwin.
I had to deeply consider some of these issues that you have raised and came to the conclusion that the motion was properly drafted. And so when you read the Constitution properly and then outstanding orders, you see that no error has been made. And because of this motion, you know what has happened to the state of our city. Just because people are gaining confidence that action is being taken, the city gained some value. And Parliament should be commended. It climbed from about 16 to $1 to around 13. That is a serious gain for this country, and it's because there's some confidence given to the people that action is being taken to rectify the wrong.
Yes, Dr. Osai-Kwapong, what do you expect will pan out as regards what Parliament, as in the minority, wants to do with regards to the Keno Foriata?
I mean, I'm sure the minority have the numbers, but they would need additional numbers from the majority side. If the majority MPs are truly serious about the fact that they are dissatisfied, and all the warnings they sent out are really serious warnings, then I would expect that, let's say, in the event that the president does not accede to their demand, they would look for other alternatives. And an alternative that is available or will be available to them would be joining the minority caucus to vote on this motion of censure. But again, all of it comes with, it has to be a very well calculated political move, because these things also do come with political consequences. And I'm sure they themselves, being political actors, know that. Probably they've worked out all their political calculus. That's why they even went public with their demands. And again, I think that if they really want to press on with their demands, if the president doesn't act, then I expect that they would, join the minority and, look for another avenue to press on their demands. But in the end, they would have to deal with whatever gains or losses that comes with this public move that they have made.
Right. Clara, what do you say about how this is even a dangerous thing to do by the majority group, that, sections of the society are applauding them, and yet it's such a dangerous thing to do because, as we can see already, some of the youth groups within the party are issuing threats. They are actually insulting them and saying that they are making the president unpopular and so on and so forth. So like Dr. Osai-Kwapong said, these MPs, if they are not careful, are likely to suffer a backlash. What does that tell you about our society?
It brings back to issues. In fact, the fact that we are even here calls into issues whether apart from elections and the white letter law, we are also mindful of the values that sustain democracy. Because I've always maintained that democracy is not just about white or black letter law. There are certain values that underpin democracy. And it is those values that make democracy gain the positive effects that it has for people who practice it. So this issue throws back our democratic values. And I'll come back to that point. But briefly, the fact, like I said at the beginning, I'm actually a bit disappointed that we've come to this level. And I say so because cornerstone of democracy is that you always have at the back of your mind what the majority of the people desire, even if you disagree with them. It is for that reason that I believe it was David Cameron had to resign, not because he had lost an election. He had actually won not too long ago, very convincingly, but because he campaigned for Britain to remain in the EU. And the majority of the people, when they went to the polls, opted for Brexit. He decided that his stay in office was not tenable because he advocated this, and clearly the people want that. So I am leaving office so that we can get someone who will champion what the people are calling for. It is very clear, if you listen to the news, that across the political divide, including from the majority, as well as from the general public, that people are calling for the head of the finance minister, whether rightly or wrongly. It is not about whether they are right or they are wrong. It is about what they believe. And part of the duties of a minister, if you look at the ministerial oath, is the fact that you will always give freely your good counsel to the president in terms of what you believe would be in the interest of good governance or good management of the country. I was hoping that the finance minister himself would not actually wait for all of this to take place, that the vote of censure, the clamor for his removal, the threat from the majority MPs, the threat of many people wanting to go on the street. But in the spirit of democratic values, to recognize that although in the law, I can stay for as long as the president says I am staying, I have looked at what majority of other sections of the population are demanding. And I recognize that although a lot of things may be legal, not all of them may necessarily be good. And for this reason, I am grateful to the president for the confidence that you have in me, that I should continue. But I am voluntarily leaving so that you can replace someone that the majority of the people want to see at the helm of the affairs, whilst I still provide whatever help in any way that I can continue to provide outside of the ministerial position. I think this would solve a lot of the problems. So I am actually disappointed that it has come to this, because the revocation becomes necessary only if the finance minister does not resign, or if the president does not accept the resignation of the finance minister, which legally can be contested anyway. But leaving that aside, I am hoping that the finance minister will have the thoughts, will have a second thoughts, think through it, and decide that I am leaving not because I believe I am incompetent. I do not necessarily agree, but if these are the calls of the people who elected us into office, there is no reason to hold my party and the rest of the nation to ransom over this issue, so that now the issue of the 80 MPs become problematic. Already they don't have the numbers.
Okay.
So politically, I am not very sure that this is necessarily working to their advantage, and clearly, certainly not impressing a lot of the Ghanaian public as well. So my hope is we should not have to get there.
Okay.
And hope when the president comes into our homes tomorrow, we would see something that is more conciliatory to the people.
We'll speak to that shortly. So before we take our break, before you say what you want to say, there's a question that says that there were conflict of interest issues that were raised by the majority rebel group, quote unquote, just as the CSOs and other citizens have been doing long ago. How do you, the majority whip, reconcile those conflict of interest issues raised with agreeing for Ken Ofori-Atta to stay for 3 more weeks or even more? Does it not matter anymore to you that you need to act, now, and that you don't have to give him any of the time that you are giving him?
Samson, I think we have passed that stage now, but where we are, just listening to the submission from my co-panelists, I understand the fact that people are now talking about the majority group, whether what we did was just a scam or what we did, we were just playing to the politics of it. Samson, we were very clear and we were serious about it.
First, were you part of that group?
You see, like I said, I'm a government whip. I'm in a tight position.
Yeah, so you can't be part of that group.
So what I'm trying to say is that the majority group, our decision was very clear. And we did it in the confines of our ability and our strength. We said, one, we will boycott every government business that comes into the chamber. What is political scam now is the motion of censure that the minority have actually filed in Parliament. It is playing to the gallery of public politics. It is actually trying to win the sympathy of the public vis-a-vis what the majority did. I said so because, one, we are all aware in Article 82 what you need to be able to pass a motion of censure. The minority are well aware that there are 136 members, and 136 members cannot pass a motion of censure. You need at least 183 members to be able to pass that. So what are you actually trying to do? That you are filing a motion of censure to remove a minister, knowing very well that the Constitution doesn't give you the right in terms of the numbers, the strength you have in Parliament.
They are doing it, hoping that some of you will join
them. We could also say that the motion they filed, that we were also filing it, hoping from them. But we know that we don't have the strength if they are not actually going to support us.
When you decided to act, you have now actually almost backtracked somehow.
No,
so why do you say DS is a scam? Because there's no guarantee that you will do what you could do.
Samson, you see, this call and this current happening in our country, it's not the first of its kind. We need to actually be happy and, thank the majority group for adding another phase to our democracy, and even thank the President of the Republic under his response. Because when he called us, he didn't tell us that, look, this is a clear, the legislature interfering in the work of the executive, because it's we are actually to do laws and other things. Who appoint and fire is the duty of the executive. But you see, the President told us that he will act on it and appeal to us. In 2014-15, when there was serious outcry in the country, where businesses were collapsing, when we went to IMF, when the cedi depreciated by some 40%, the clergy visited former President John Mahama and said Setfega must go. He said he has heard the call that Setfega should go, but he will not do it. He said it to our face that he will not do it. For the President to even appeal to us and say that, okay, do this within the time frame, we need to recommend him for that. And you see, my sister was talking about President Mahama call, and you also made it that the military should stay in the barracks. That is a very dangerous call to be made by a former president. I said so with all.
We're talking about the president himself.
No, I'm talking about the John Mahama.
No.
The president is the commander in chief. So if I am a commander in chief, it's more or less giving you an instruction. And if you are not a commander in chief, and you are also saying something, you are triggering something else. You see, the point is that the
president made a statement, and I'm saying Mahama is supporting him. You say that's wrong.
And I'm saying that the president said so, and he's the commander-in-chief of the Ghana Armed Forces. It's just like the manager of Joy FM telling you that stay in your room, don't come. And a nearby person passing by also telling you to stay in your room. It's a different call. I said so because, you see, you are triggering and even planting other thinking into people's mind. That stay in the barracks in the time that we are doing, don't do this. What you are saying, you are planting the notion of coup in them. But if I am your commander and I'm telling you to stay indoors, it is a different thing. So we need to actually appreciate what the majority caucus have been able to do. We recommend the work that
the president said, I want to encourage you to continue the good work that you are doing for our country. I encourage you to stand firm in your loyalty to the Republic, your loyalty to the Constitution of our nation, so that the orderly, peaceful development of our country, which is the only way that can guarantee the future prosperity we are all working for, can come about, so that these generations of Ghanaians will leave as our legacy, that even when things were difficult in Ghana, we all held together under our Republican institutions and our Constitution to find a way to a better future for our nation. I am confident that we can do it, and I am counting on you to help me do it. This is what the president was saying.
What the commander-in-chief said.
When he told them that he wants them to be loyal to the Constitution. Then Mahama also says, I support what the president said.
I think Samson,
keep faith with the Constitution.
Samson, I have explained this. It's two different people calling. A commander-in-chief of the Ghana Armed Forces speaking to his officers, and a former president also speaking to his officers. And I've cited an example. Like a manager of Joy FM telling the workers to stay in there because he's a manager. And then somebody who has actually been a pass-by person also telling them that, oh, look, he's saying you should stay, but we should be mindful that try and stay. What are you trying to plant in the minds of people?
Nothing.
We are descending people, and we know exactly what the president is trying to. He's trying to play the politics. This is just another form of rebranding of President Mahama. He is somebody who has driven us before. He has been our driver. He was in the seat, and we know exactly what he did.
Thank you.
Definitely, this rebranding will not work.
Thank you. We take a break here. And then when we return, I will be asking my guests to tell me what they expect to hear from the president after all the meetings he has had with the various stakeholders regarding the economic situation. This show is brought to you by the candid sponsorship of Bank of Africa. As strong as a group and close as a partner, MTN everywhere you go. Star Assurance, your solid partner. Ashasi University, educating ethical and entrepreneurial leaders for Africa. Robert & Sons Optical Services, your comprehensive eye care service provider for 31 years. Fenard Ghana, think Wood, think Fenard. Duroplast, how you get your water matters. Remember, where Duroplast goes, water flows. St. Thomas Eye Hospital, providing excellence in eye care. Hoptel, everything you and Miwe Insurance. Simply dial *165# on the MTN to join an insurance that works for you. And my guests this morning who have joined us and we have been having the discussion are Clara Kolega, Berry Kasati. She's a lawyer, lecturer, University of Ghana School of Law and board member of the CDD Ghana. Also, John Osai Kwapong is political scientist, democracy and development fellow at the CDD Ghana. Dr. Kwabna Nyako Otu is chief economist and director, Labor Research and Policy Institute, Trades Union Congress. Habib Idrisu, you just heard him a while ago, MP for Tolong and Deputy Majority Chief Whip. Mona Kote is managing partner, BVM Advisory Services, and former Deputy Minister of Finance. We'll be right back. You're welcome back. This is Newsfile. It's your most authoritative news analysis platform. And here on Newsfile, we put Ghana first. Ken asked a question. He says, please ask Habib whether he would have accepted Mohammed's message if it had come from a religious leader which sought to support Akufo-Addo. Then there's a couple of messages I'm sharing with you. Frank Anderson says, we have gone beyond sacking of Foriata. The president and the entire economic management team are complicit. Surprisingly, not a single one of them tendered their resignation on principle. Those MPs have no credibility, hence the unsurprising U-turn. They have been in Parliament and applauded Oforiatta when he was churning out false figures. Sadly, if the president resigns per our constitution, Bawumia will finish the unexpired term. We are stuck. Interesting there. Kwame says that it took Zambia 2 years to negotiate an IMF deal. Now that it has emerged that the economic data Ghana presented to the fund was inaccurate, should Ghana's negotiations go on indefinitely? The NPP MP saying Ken will be at post. So quite a number of interesting questions coming in. Musa says the president's response to the 80 MPs who called for the resignation of his cousin is unacceptable. So there is no competent person in the NPP to continue IMF negotiations. The logic of President Akufo-Addo is that we should wait till Ghana is totally collapsed before something drastically is done. Well, we cannot say that for sure. We wait to hear him tomorrow and what he has to say. All right, so we'll continue here, and then I'll read some of your messages later. The president is speaking tomorrow. What are the expectations of Ghanaians? And that should be voiced through you who are here in the studio and through Zoom speaking to the country. What are the people's expectations of what the president is going to be talking about? Remember that he has spent 3 days meeting various stakeholders, including the Trades Union Congress, including Forex traders, market women, bankers, and various other groups. What is he going to be saying tomorrow? What should he be saying that should make any difference? He has met with the Association of Ghana Industries, Ghana Association of Banks, Transport Operators, Forex Bureau, Association of Ghana Market Women, the Ghana Employers Association, Private Enterprise Federation, TUC, among others. Let me begin with the TUC. And as you know, Dr. Nyakotu is with us. Yes, let's hear you, Doc.
Thank you. For us, before our meeting with the president, hello?
Yes, we can hear you. We can hear you.
Before our meeting with the president, I think on Tuesday, we had the opportunity, we sponsored a meeting between the leadership of the TUC, the Employers Association, AGI, Chamber of Commerce, and a host of other employers and industrial players. And the topic was the economy and the way it's been unfolding. So we had a good platform to share perspectives and to also put forward what we think the president ought to be doing, the government ought to be doing at this point. I mean, it is clear to us that the situation is critical. And to give you how critical it is, if you read the Bank of Ghana report, and I've seen some of the graphs you have done, the Bank of Ghana says that we have a net international reserve of about 6.6 billion, enough to cover 2.9 months of import. But the net reserve, which is unencumbered funds, minus petroleum funds, these are funds that are readily available, is just about 2.9 billion, which is barely enough to cover 1 month import cover. So the situation is critical, and that is what is putting pressure on the city. And the Bank of Ghana report also indicates, for example, that the massive deficit of about 41 billion Ghana cedis, because we are shut out of the international market, we are not able to borrow externally, so we are borrowing internally. Borrowing internally means exactly that the Bank of Ghana is picking up a lot of the tab and monetizing the debt, the deficit, which also actually means that we are printing money, and that feeds into rising inflation and devaluing the currency. So the situation is critical. And we don't know exactly what will happen in the next few days. So government, and in this case the president, must on Sunday provide adequate information to the Ghanaian public. That will quell the speculation, which is partly also to blame for. Of course, the underlying fundamentals are not good. The speculation then feeds on those underlying bad fundamentals. And then we are seeing all this devaluation of the city with rising inflation and its impact on the young people, the working people of this country. So some clarity in terms of what is actually going on will be important for us going forward. But it is clear that going forward, more sacrifices will have to be made by the population if you have to save this economy from collapsing. But that sacrifice, in our view, ought to come or ought to begin with government. So we expect the president to announce very drastic measures that actually begins with the government led by Nana Akufo-Addo. And to be straightforward, we think that we need a radical downsizing of government. We need to restructure the ministerial portfolio. So you have ministries that have 3 deputies. You need to cut it to 1, to be specific. You have state-owned agencies that are actually ramping up salaries and allowances and perks and everything, but they're also running huge losses that have to be picked up by the state. We need to do something about it. Unfortunately, some of these agencies have, 3 deputies. Why should that be the case? We should cut it to 1. And we should also announce drastic measures that let the population know that the government and its functionaries are actually living the crisis the way the ordinary Ghanaian is living it. I mean, the president should tell us that he has installed meters, prepaid meters in the residences of every minister. They should also pay for the utility price increases. They should pay for their water. And some of these things should be clear, should be demonstrably clear to Ghanaians. That is the only way you can rally the population around and say that, hey, we are in a difficult time and we need to be doing what we have to do to save this country. And if the president fails to announce some of these clear, demonstrable measures and comes with half-hearted, unclear slogans, there's no way the population will be willing to go along with the difficult choices that this country have to make. But also, this shouldn't be the last address. The situation is unfolding. New things are coming, new measures are coming. So just like the fellow Ghanaians under COVID, we expect the president and his ministers to be talking more. But, I mean, let me emphasize this. The reshuffle bit is important. The president, like every employer, will want to repose confidence in his workers. It is good. We are a labor union and we want to protect the people we unionize. But the president should know that all those talking about reshuffle, I mean, they work with the ministers. His 5 best ministers, people work with them. They know them on a constant basis in the ministries. They know them. His confidence is not as high as the confidence of the people who have been working with with those ministers. And it is important that, just like Ara mentioned, in a democracy, the fundamental letter, the values, is the majoritarian rule. What are the majority of the people saying? And the president must have the intelligence to be able to hear what the majority of the people are saying. On the Forex thing, I think we need drastic measures. I mean, we introduced the Forex exchange, the Forex bureaus for a purpose. We need to assess whether that purpose has been met. You now have a situation where people are standing in front of the airport police station and other police stations trading dollars and cedis as if they are Kelewole. And the police look on. Nobody does anything to. You now have a situation in this country where we say we have an alternative central bank at Cowley. So if you want to transfer $1 million and you don't have the papers to be able to do that transfer, go to Cowley. They will transfer it for you. And there's evidence, or at least growing suspicion that, Cowley is very close to the Bank of Ghana. There's an active collaboration between the two, the alternative central bank and the real central bank. These are the things our intelligence system must pick up and be able to address. We need long-term, medium to long-term things. We need to address our trade policy. That has encouraged import of everything. And this country one of our top 10 imports is the thing we call the Yamabie, intestines. Carrying dollars to go and buy intestines. We need to do all of it. We need to deal with all of these things. But we must also support domestic industry. And here the politics is important. In 2011, I read something by Dr. Kwesi that a government that says that we are building private sector. Parties come into government, and the private sector they are building is the private sector of their own party people. Whether competent, whether they are really rare industrialists, we do not know. So every other party, business person will have to go into abeyance. We promote new entrepreneurs.
And the private sector sometimes is also a private sector of importers And that's also
not
killing
real
us.
producers.
We say we are doing a school feeding program, and the people should eat and buy, produce from the local environment to use. Then we quickly get, party people who are importers, and they go to China and bring some stuff. Then they come and replace the eggs that the kids are supposed to be taking, because somebody will make profit.
Exactly, the point. So why we have an active import lobby that has demobilized government's trade policy. You can't do anything about it because they finance the parties into government. One other thing we also need to look at is our revenue generation. Why is revenue not coming? Why do we suddenly wake up and realize that the shops are not issuing the VAT invoice? Didn't we know this all this while ago? We knew it. Why didn't we do anything about it? We need to check the massive tax exemptions that is going to political cronies and all those people. We need to check it.
All right.
We need to check the leakages in the energy sector.
Mm-hmm.
We need to check it.
All right.
But finally, in this our situation today, I think all of us must refrain from the blame game. I mean, we are in this together at this point. The boat is sinking, and the party colors does not determine whether you sink or not. In fact, we are in it and we are all sinking.
Great.
And the president tomorrow must be reconciliatory, as somebody has said. We need to build bridges. We need to ensure that we can have some political accommodation, bring everybody on board to make sure that, irrespective of their party colors, they are contributing their ideas, they are contributing their bid to the recovery process of this economy.
Right. We'll listen to what President Mahama expects as his contribution to what should be happening. But the Citizen Coalition, they had a press conference, and among others, they said that the government has to address the challenges that confront the citizens, and there are specific moral boosting actions. And I'm mentioning because Dr. Otu spoke about some of these. Morale boosting actions that should signal readiness to subject its leadership to accountability, cut expenditure, plug leakages in government spending, and tackle corruption. In this regard, they endorse the call by citizens, the majority of MPP MPs, and many well-meaning Ghanaians who have asked for the dismissal of the finance minister and his deputies. We commend the majority MPs for taking this important step, as his dismissal or resignation would restore some confidence in Ghana's financial market. This should be done without any delay. The president should urgently take moral boosting measures by reshuffling his ministers. Given what has transpired over the last year, it is evident that they have not been excellent. Certainly, the team that led us to the current crisis cannot steer us out of it. The president should reduce the total number of ministers, and deputies to not more than 70. I think President Mahama was talking about 60, and I was beginning to ask if that's what he's suggesting that he will deal with if he won power. This will signal a clear commitment to reducing public expenditure as corroborated by the majority leader sometime in July. The Citizen Coalition welcomed the call by Occupy Ghana for a lean and mean government. Based on the Professor Ya Intemwa Bedu Presidential Committee on Emoluments report of June 2020, the average monthly basic salary, they're talking about ministers, how much they are getting, and how something should be done about all of these. And what should be done, they say, should be urgently. And what did Occupy Ghana call for? It says, government must own the problem. Government must adopt a warlike posture. And 3, government must bring people around the table for solutions. Let's listen to former President Mahama, and then we begin to hear our guests as well.
I re-echo demands by Ghanaians that the finance minister and the chair of the economic management team, who have been primarily responsible for this economic catastrophe, should be relieved of their positions to breed confidence among stakeholders and offer the economy a new lease of life.
Our production tells me that there's some technical problem. They would be able to play some more of what the former president had to say. So let me begin with Dr. Osai Kwapong. What are your expectations? Tomorrow's address.
Okay, Samson. So let me start by recounting a small story from one of my favorite movies, and it's called The American President. And so in there, a popular president at some point is starting to have difficulties. A poll is taken and there are questions being raised about the president. And so one of his staff members takes it to him and he says to the president, "You have a deeper love of this country than any man that I've ever known. So what does it say to you that over the last couple of weeks, 59% of Americans have been questioning your patriotism?" And it's one of my favorite movies for all of the political lessons that that movie teaches. So for me, my expectation tomorrow from the president is two things. He must address the political markets and he must address the economic markets. In the political markets are the citizens who voted for you, and even those who didn't vote for you are still citizens of this country that must be served and served very well. And what I want the president respectfully to recall to mind is to think of all of the goodwill that greeted him in 2016, the strong backing that he got politically, and even the good ratings that he got in Afrobarometer 2017. Because for me, anytime I look at the trajectory of this presidency, and which I've written about in an editorial about the changing perceptions of the government, that is where sometimes I get a little baffled, right? Thinking about where he came from and where he is now in terms of the public perceptions. And again, that is why I recall the movie where it's all of a sudden you hear public sentiments that this is a man who is either detached, doesn't care, etc., etc. So for me, what I want him to do is, on the politics side of this, he needs to give assurance to the citizens, right? He needs to recall all of those good moments in which citizens stood by him. And he needs to be able to convey to us that, look, it's not that I don't hear, I don't see, I feel your pinch point, you know, your all the pain points, or your pinch points, I understand, etc., etc. Yes, that doesn't immediately solve all of the circumstances, but I think there's been a bit of a gap, especially between when we announced that we were going to seek an IMF bailout and now. That has sort of created the impression that the government's attitude is more of, let's ride it out and see what happens. So I want him to do that. I really want him to be able to try as much as he can to win some of that goodwill back with a reassuring message using a very conciliatory tone. Hopefully that will succeed. And then Dr. Otu has, given a list of strong positive actions that he will have to demonstrate on the economic on the economic market side of things, which is specific actions that would give, bring back confidence among traders, among industry, investors. All of those things will be very, very critical to do. But for me, when all is said and done, because again, when he used to do fellow Ghanaians during COVID, right? One thing that I would also want to bring to his attention is, at the end of the day, if you look at Afrobarometer round 9, no matter how bad it was in quite a number of areas, on the management of COVID, 84% of Ghanaians said it was managed well. And I'm sure that part of it was that constant engagement and communication with the citizens, regular updates, things that we're doing. And so again, for me, ultimately, I just hope that when all is said and done, specific actions and all of that, the president would be able to remind us of the man he got a whole lot of Ghanaians to be excited about and give him all the goodwill that they gave him.
Clara, what are your expectations and how does the president carry the nation along and we are told that things will get worse?
I'm not happy to hear that things will get worse because things are already Difficult, very, very difficult. Now, what I expect to see, to hear from the president is that, of course, he's taking tours. So I expect to see that the people will be at the center of his speech tomorrow. And when I'm talking about the people, I'm talking about what he would have heard and felt and seen from the people, from the many engagements that he has carried out across the nation before tomorrow. I also expect to hear something positive about the economy, some assurances. There's been a lot of talk, and people are worried, for example, about, their investments in certain government bonds and whether what is going to happen as well and all of that. I expect the president to say something about the economy, including that, so that it can bring about some assurance. We've said it time and again. The thing that makes banking successful is public confidence. It is trust. People need to have trust that, okay, when their money is here, it is safe. So the recent discussions and talk in the public media about the economic situation vis-a-vis investments is an important area that should not be neglected. We need some assurance from the president as to what our true situation is, what we need going forward, and most importantly, measures that government is taking to ensure that it doesn't get harder for us. I'm sure that when the president went around, he would have, of course, seen and felt the despondency and generally among the populace. He would have seen the struggles of people. I expect his speech to be able to engineer hope. Hope is an important commodity for any human being and in any democracy and country. So I expect to hear something that would engender hope amongst the people. And most importantly, I also expect to see something that will deepen our democracy. I expect that hopefully this will not once again or bring about NDC MPP bickering, but I hope to see that something that will deepen our democracy. I expect the speech to reflect not just slogans, as you said, but to reflect action that deepens the democratic values and sets an example, a good example, a worthy example at that matter for the people. Just like the COVID times, it is very clear that these are not exactly very normal times, given what has happened, particularly this year or the past few months. So I expect the president to accord it all the seriousness that it is, and as Professor Osai Papong said, to be more conciliatory in the speech and carry everybody along, irrespective of their political views or political opinions or other opinions.
Some will ask, where is the optimism coming from you, the guys in the civil society front, particularly coming from a point where you have had the opportunity to sit with this president and you have told him what was going wrong, and he told you to your faces that he has experts in his government just like you, so just shut up, let him do his work. At the times when you were saying, this thing, cathedral, stop it and all, he kept telling you, we'll do it. So what? Where is the optimism coming from that he will be any different from the reactions you have gotten from him over the many months when it was obvious that this country was going downhill?
I want to hope that when he did his tours, when he went around speaking to the people, he would go and reflect on what the people would have told him. And I am positive that the people would have carried a lot of the sentiments that I'm expressing today. So my hope comes from the people, that he would reflect on what the people have told him, and then we look to see what happens tomorrow. And I sincerely hope that he comes and reflects a lot of the values, examples that we need to move our democracy forward.
During this tour, he touted a lot of things, spoke about how good his ministers are, and this was the time that you were expecting him to tone down. He was talking about how good his ministers are and said a whole host of things. He was getting booed around the place, and then he literally cursed people for feedback that he was receiving, and he said God will punish them one by one. And they asked him about, election issues. He said, well, nobody forces you to vote, and so on. So again, that's the question. Where does the confidence come that you're going to get a different, demonstration?
I can't say, of course, I have no idea what the president is coming to say or demonstrate, but it's more like a plea to the president. So I'm making a plea to the president rather than an expectation of what the president is going to do, because I have absolutely no idea what the president is coming to do tomorrow.
These pleas have been made, for example, for the sack of his minister. The pleas have been made, we remember Professor Godfrey Bokpeng, Dr. Theo Champon, Martin Pebu, various people. For months now, these pleas have been made. He hasn't listened.
I hope I'm making the plea one more time, and it's just between today and tomorrow. So I make it one more time and hope that this time the president will think about it and reconsider. Okay,
thank you. Now, let's hear from Mona. We'll have Habib, have the last opportunity, to also address some of the issues that some of you have raised.
We're in this mess because an untouchable finance minister, relying on his data bank workers and neglecting the advice of seasoned experts at the finance ministry, has been left to run this economy into the ground. We're in this mess because the so-called solid economic management team over the last several years has been unable to call the president's cousin to order when he embarked on a reckless borrowing spree, when he embarked on indiscriminate closure of indigenous banks and financial institutions, and when he embarked on creative economic presentation of statistics to make our situation look rosier than the reality. We're in this mess because we have a president who fails to take responsibility and has instead left the nation on autopilot.
Right. Are your expectations any different from what your leader had to say? He said we should revisit Operation Feed Yourself. He did something that yesterday got social media agog. People were eating gobe and posting on social media. He said we too have a responsibility that we ought to take, and so on and so forth, and cutting down ministers and so on.
Yes. So, to be honest, I think yesterday's speech by President Mahama was one that was coming...
2 days ago.
2 days ago, I'm sorry. Was one that was coming from a person, a former president who has seen the works before and who was trying to proffer practical solutions for this crisis that we all find ourselves in. And he tried to add humor to it, whilst reminding us, even as citizens, that even without the president, there are certain things that we can do. Eat local, patronize local, grow food ourselves. So he wasn't even just dwelling on the president. And Samson, I believe that he didn't overdwell on the president for two reasons. One, because clearly we have a leadership deficit. And at this point, I want to even take off my political hat, if I even have a big one. I believe it's a small, but I take it off now. It's about Ghana, and it's about our future. So in as much as I agree with a lot of the things that Mr. Mahama said, I want to also add my voice to what Dr. Nyakotu and John Osei-Kwapon has mentioned as we hope will be, and Clara, of course, will be in the president's speech. Most likely it will not, but we will still say it because words carry weight. I made 2 points before I came in. My first point is that we must send positive action-oriented signals, and we've listed many of them today. But I want to add that over and above the cutting of ostentatious expenditure items, please, for the sake of Ghana, let's do the right thing. Let's utilize our gift-miss system for purposes of checks and balances. Ghanaians may ask, what is that system? It is our accounting system within our public financial system. To date, only 30% of government expenditure or public expenditure goes through that system. That is a failure on the part of our economic management team, which is overlooked by, or which is looked over by the president himself. That in itself is bad, which means that we don't know what happens to the other 70% expenditure. So please, let's go back to the gift-miss system so that we can account properly. And this is why the IMF found the team out, that they were not credible. Again, we must calm the foreign exchange market down. The depreciation of the cedi affects all of us, and we must look at this carefully because it has subsequent impacts for the inflation rate because of the cost of imports and where we are today. It didn't start today. We didn't start importing food during this regime. It's been for a while now. We need to seriously look at it, and that's why when President Mahama speaks to the issue of value addition, that value chain, taking our agrarian economy and bringing it into industry. That takes time, but it has to start from somewhere. And I know that this government is also in favor of it. So let us let that policy play out properly so that we can earn good export income and also that we will not spend so much foreign exchange. Perhaps
the Bank of Ghana and the government at large, you will admit that they've done something so far about the Forex market.
To be honest, with the Bank of Ghana, I was not going to say anything at all because for me, I am very disappointed with the way they have used the tool, the monetary policy rate, as a tool to relax inflation. They haven't done it properly. They have done it in piecemeal, and they have actually destroyed the efficiency of that tool. Number two, I think Dr. Nyako said something that I cannot say myself, and you all heard it, about are there collaborations with the black market, which is self-defeating, but I will leave it there. So I will look at a few more that I would like to add to the president's notes, if he would listen, is that perhaps a temporary suspension of some nuisance taxes that are factored into the cost of fuel. And we saw that happen in the US. I'm not saying the countries are the same, but it's a strategy that helps. If you take out some of the nuisance tax from the fuel price, you can reduce that fuel price. We know that fuel price has a lot of tentacles. It affects transportation, therefore it affects food and everything. So I think that is an area that our wonderful economic management team should look at and work on that. I also think that the government must consider using the government administration, let me put it that way, public administration must consider using much more fuel-efficient vehicles. There are a lot of vehicles used by government for many purposes, some valid, some not. Fueling of government vehicles, please. Let us have government vehicles that are fuel efficient and do not need to use so much fuel, and so forth. Large engine capacities, old inefficient engines. And also there was a policy that sort of punished people who imported cars which had engine capacity more than 2.5 liters. We should look at that again and make sure that even when someone says, oh, me, I can pay, it's not about you. It's about the nation. No more personal gratification, but the nation. We are in a crisis. So for one, it's our cutting of our expenditure, especially consumption, not capital expenditure. That I support fully. So consumption expenditure. Number two, I hope to see in his speech is how this debt restructuring will take place. It is something that with or without the IMF, we will have to do something about it. There are two parts, the external and the domestic part. I would like to speak to the domestic part because today I'm feeling for the people of Ghana and for myself because I am suffering too. Although this will be necessary to push the elephant out of the fiscal space, we must remember that many well-meaning Ghanaians have saved monies, and this is a good culture. The saving culture is good to create capital, whether for business today, whether for pension, no matter what it's for, savings is good. What is happening today? The vacuum that has been created that people are filling with speculation is making people withdraw their monies. When you hold cash, you will spend it. We are killing the savings culture, and that is not good for the long term, and it's not good for our youth. Both Ghanaians and foreigners have gambled their capital on Ghana because, honestly, Ghana appeared to be the shining star of Africa. The African Center for Trade is situated here. This is the gateway. Ghanaians have always proven to be safe people, calm people. This is where all foreigners and even Ghanaians would like to invest. Please, let's not take that away from this nation. This nation deserves to be the peaceful country where you can invest. Let us have a team that is truthful and transparent and gives us correct accounts. And let us make Ghana great again. Let us make Ghana what it should be. So I will leave it on that note because it's up to the president what he wants to say. But he must remember, it's not about him. Up until now, it's all about him. We are sorry.
And talking about the Forex, whether there's some collusion with the black market, it's difficult to think that that will be there.
Very difficult.
When as we speak, there has been such a crack, if you like, on the Forex market, and those who are doing the black market business are being arrested. Those who are also doing Forex business and are not doing right, they are getting shut down. We just heard about the Marina Mall shutdown of a revocation of license for operating. So it does appear that some good work is happening there. On the question of fuel and the energy sector, let's pray. And I keep saying this, let's pray we don't get to the Sri Lanka situation where fuel was rationed for essential service workers, because you can't go anywhere. That's why some people are also suggesting that there could be work from home, policy, so that people can't afford the transportation. Experts like Alex Mould have been saying a few things, that there are many challenges coming in the few weeks. Corresponding banks have slashed their credit lines to Ghana. Oil traders have huge receivables from bulk oil distribution companies. These BDCs, their credit teams are jittery on their exposure, and so are their banks. BDCs can't get hold of Forex to settle their existing liabilities. For some, the US dollar is just unavailable, among other things, and he has some suggestions as to how to resolve that. We go for a quick break. We return to hear from the Deputy Majority Whip. You're welcome back. This is Newsfile. It's your most authoritative news analysis platform, and here on Newsfile, we put Ghana first. My guest, Clara Kasati, lawyer, lecturer at the University of Ghana School of Law and board member of the CDD Ghana. Dr. John Osai Kwapong is political scientist, democracy and development fellow, CDD Ghana. Dr. Kwabna Nyakotu is chief economist and director, Labor Research and Policy Institute of the TUC. Habib Idrisu is MP for Tolong and deputy majority chief whip. Mona Kote is managing partner, BVM Advisory Services and former deputy minister of finance. Habib will now speak to us, but before that, let me share these messages. Kofi Boateng says, our situation is beyond satire, but I can't hold myself anytime I listen to the government and its actions. How can you even think of sending false data to the IMF and not be found out? It is very telling of the state of the minds of the minds that are leading the negotiations. Ajay Bequin says that for some 24 hours, the 80 MPs were seen as Ghana's historic political heroes. After meeting the president, they are becoming more of hypocrites to Ghanaians. They have another chance to prove their genuineness by supporting the minority in their vote of censure. Kofi Amwa, K. Amwa, says, if the president of Ghana sees the current economic situation as not serious as the people of Ghana are experiencing, then he has no business being in office. The president has not taken any action to demonstrate to Ghanaians we are in crisis. The president and his ministers appointees took some haircut too, except that people say that is not enough. The Israel lie says, I wasn't one of those swayed by the majority MPs' move this week because they made it clear it was about winning the next election. That was their focus. NJ Baby says that I believe strongly in what Madam Clara is saying on Newsfile. The finance minister can resign and still hold his head up. You can't possibly go against the will of the people. Yes, Habib. We shouldn't be asking what your expectation should be because you are in government, so to speak. We should ask what you know the president will be talking about.
Samson, before I get to that, I've actually listened to some of my colleagues and my sister and some of those who have texted to an effect that people are thinking that the Ministry of Finance have actually given the IMF a wrong data. We need to respect the institution IMF. Due diligence is done by them. They are a credible organization. They will not just sit down and say that the government of Ghana is giving them wrong information. They just take information like that. It is never true that government have provided them with wrong information. In fact, the team came. They were even in Parliament. They met the leadership of Parliament. They met the Finance Committee of Parliament. And I think they met the Public Account Committee of Parliament. So it is never true. And it's never the case that the Ministry of Finance or government have given IMF wrong data. You see, the most important thing is that people are marveled and people are surprised the rate at which the negotiation is going in terms of speed. I think Dr. Kobana said that the NDC were able to get their program with IMF within 6 months. The IMF have trust in this government and the president of that matter. So it is something that they have speed up.
Kwame doesn't know what he's talking about.
So what I'm trying to say is that at the end of the day, the 2023 budget will be presented. And I am very convinced from where I sit that the negotiation of IMF will be concluded by then and will be incorporated.
Will be concluded by the 15th of November?
Will be incorporated in the budget. Will be incorporated in the budget. It's not going to be surprising. They did their own in 6 months. So if we are...
So tomorrow, instead of what the president told us this week, that soon he will be telling us that by 15th we would have a deal with IMF.
I don't know what the president will tell you, but what I can tell you is that I am convinced that by the 15th of November, the budget that will be presented in Parliament will have incorporated in it the IMF.
No, you use the word concluded.
Wow. Yes. So if it is something concluded, it will be incorporated into the budget. If it is not concluded, it cannot be incorporated in the budget because it will be part of the program for the 2023.
This is a major announcement you are making. Do you recognize that?
Yeah, you see, the president have said soon.
Because it has what it can do for the market.
Yes. You know, I am not surprised at the rate and the speed at which it is going because we have very credible president and credible people at the finance ministry. And
so is this factual?
I'm telling you, and we should stop trying to pollute the Ghanaian people's mind that the finance ministry have provided wrong data to them. IMF themselves came on the ground and to meet people and be able to understand what is going on. What is actually known is that when Dufour was governor of Bank of Ghana, he provided wrong data to World Bank and Ghana was even fine. The most important thing is that Samson, one of your those who texted asked a question that if it was a religious leader who has done the presentation,
who has supported President Akufo-Addo's call on the military.
No, not that. I think it was the speech President Mahama gave, former President Mahama gave. If it was a religious leader, whether I would take it serious.
No, he was specific that if it was a religious leader who supported President Mahama's call to the who supported President Mahama's support, okay, of the call by President Akufo-Addo to the military would you have said what you have to say?
Okay, Samson, then I didn't understand him or I couldn't hear him well.
Okay.
Then I'll be able to proceed to make my presentation. The most important thing tomorrow, I expect that the president will...
This is what he said. This is what he said. And this was from Ken. He says, please ask Habib whether he would have accepted Mohammed's message if it had come from a religious leader which sought to support Akufo-Addo.
So, message, it was not specific on military.
What he supported Akufo-Addo about was military should stay committed to the constitution.
Okay, so Samson, the most important thing I needed to say after listening to President Mahama's presentation, the fact that the finance minister need to go, the fact that government is not listening. Samson, we were all in this country. I haven't forgotten about the dead goat syndrome. I don't know whether you can remember it. John Mahama said
what your expectations are of the president tomorrow.
Samson, if you were in a position, if you were the one who come to tell me things and present what former President Mahama did, I would have believed you, because you haven't been vice president for 3 years. You haven't been president for 5 years. That I would believe you. For John Mahama, former President John Mahama coming to tell us and the lecture that he has done, it was just a rehash.
Shouldn't you rather believe the one who has experience?
No. You see, the point is that everything that he has said 2 days ago was a rehash of his own utterances that he has been in, lamentation of his failure.
There are many people who are talking about Operation Feed Yourself. It's been how many decades of a policy that was talked about?
Samson,
so if it's a rehash, but it works,
I have listened to him on 3 different occasions, and there's nothing new. All what he said, he has said it before. I listened to him at the Harvard Business School. I listened to his interview at the Voice of Africa and the lecture that he did in Accra. And when I compare what he said yesterday, 2 days ago, and what he has said before, it is just to tell us that, oh, okay, I am lamenting, I should have done this, but I couldn't be able to do this. This is not a trial and error. We are not telling you to come back. Let the President Akufo-Addo,
what you expect of Akufo-Addo tomorrow?
What I expect
is to be reacting to this.
No. What I expect from President Akufo-Addo tomorrow is to be able to bring us up to speed the negotiation with the IMF, where we are, where we are supposed to go. And I also expect the president to assure us and reassure us that the situation that we are in at the moment, we will be able to actually come out of that. He will lead us successfully to be able to come out of that. And I also expect him to assure Ghanaians and bring hope and let us know that this situation, we are in it. He should take full responsibility, even though he has done that. But addressing the whole nation, he should be able to do that. Then we'll be able to understand everything that is going. People have made a call that we should sacrifice. And the finance minister sometimes talk about burden sharing. The president, even though the first term had about 125 ministers or so, now it has been reduced to about 81. People still think that a lot needs to be done. Former President Mahama was saying that we have a lot of staffers at the presidency, and for that matter, we should cut. As a former president, he should actually set the ball rolling. He still have staffers working for him, paid by the government.
No, we are talking about...
So for that, no, he should have...
We're talking about...
But let's talk about the crisis.
I don't know why I should...
Burden sharing when they are collecting commissions. Burden sharing.
No president has done in excess of 120 ministers before.
He has reduced it to 80 or 81.
Yes, and people are asking that he can do better. What's President Mahama got to do?
So what I'm saying is that, yes, it's still a call in the right direction that the president will be able to do more with regards to this. But I am very positive that where we are at the moment...
Are you expecting him to tell Ghanaians tomorrow that what like the Citizen Coalition is saying, that he will come and tell us that, look, I'm reducing my ministers to, say, I think I read President Mahama's suggestion was up to about 60. Or people feel it can do even far better than that because we are in austere situations. This is not something that we have experienced. So do you expect him to come say that a number of ministers are collapsing, ministries are getting away, where Dr. Yankutu talked about, Stephen Amwa has spoken about before, delay some of the appointment institutions. You have 3, some places 4 deputies and all of that, not necessary. Cut all of them out. Let's have one person. or something like that? Are you expecting to say some of these things?
Samson, what I expect from the president is to give us a general overview of where we are. I also expect him to tell us the measures he's going to put in place. Actions to be able to get out of where we are. I don't want to limit it to the fact that, okay, he's cutting down ministers. If that doesn't solve the problem, why did he has to do it? But if there are other ways and other sectors that he can be able to see that, okay, let's cut off things. Yes, I do appreciate the fact that the budget of various ministries was cut down by 30%, but yet we are still in it. So for that matter, I expect tomorrow that when the president speaks for us, I am ever confident in the president. And I am very sure.
You expect he will do something that brings some agricultural revolution, so to speak. Something that we are going to do buy our own stuff and not look outside. Yes,
I do agree with my sister when she said that some products need to be banned from importation if one way or the other to reduce. I don't think it's a call that we need to ignore. Recently, I attended IPU, Interparliamentary Union in Kigali and Rwanda. That is exactly what they...
in Nigeria, they are doing some of that.
So if that will help us, the president should do. That's why I said that. I expect a general overview and measures that the president will put in place. And I am very confident. I know that tomorrow, after the president finishes delivering his speech, people will clap their hands and say,
okay,
yes.
So now
we have a lot.
Now let's deal with the other issue that you also have an important task on about Adwoa Safo. But before that, Dr. Osai Kwapong, I've got people asking me some questions. I think I should ask you if you feel the same about it. That the president should be speaking live to us rather than a recorded message. What difference does that make?
Good question.
Hello, Dr. Kwapong.
Yes. So I think, it will be the same message, but I think the feel is different, right? That it's like watching a recorded, soccer game versus, watching it live. Right, that you get a very different disposition towards it, and I think that's what some of that question is coming from, which is show up live, speak to us directly, straight, because then a recorded means maybe you've gone through drafts, massage, etc. But there's just something about a live message that gives you a different connection than so probably I think that's why it is, and I agree with that.
Okay, thank you very much. So on the Adwoa Safo matter, let's quickly go to Parliament and hear the Speaker briefly, and Afenyo Marking as well as the minority on the questioning of the Adwoa Safo being relieved or her seat being declared vacant. Let's do that quickly and come to the studio.
Representation is so crucial that it cannot be left to the subjective view of any person or group of people, but the whole House.
Okay. Okay, right. So what do you say? The minority is disappointed in this. The majority is disappointed in this. The Osei Mensah Bonsu didn't hide his displeasure at all, that the Speaker should have just made that declaration that the report of the committee is sufficient and the seat is declared vacant. Then there's a by-election, rather than say, it should go for debates by the whole House. And now somebody has gone to the Supreme Court about it.
Yes, Samson, I was actually disappointed by the ruling of the Speaker. It's rather unfortunate that the understanding or the interpretation of the Speaker of the Constitution in Article 97(1)(c) is totally wrong, and we do disagree with him entirely. Because, you see, every institution have check and balances and how you be able to regulate. The Speaker is simply trying to tell us that members of Parliament are above the law. And for that matter, anything that happens, members of Parliament should come back to Parliament to be able to take the decision. If you look at exactly what happened, he was the same person who referred the matter to the Committee on Privileges. And even in that, Honorable Muntaka, the Minority Chief Whip, challenged him and said that he is not a member of Parliament and he cannot refer the matter to the Committee on Privileges and it should be done by a member. He was able to fortify himself by Order 27 of our standing orders and said he has the right as the Speaker to do, and with your kind permission, I think he was within. Order 27, rather, of our standing orders say that, notwithstanding anything contained in this order, Mr. Speaker may refer any question of privilege to the Committee of Privilege for examination, investigation, and report. So that he was within. But at the end of the day, the committee did a thorough work. It's a committee of Parliament, and at the end of the day, they made a finding. They said that Honorable Kennedy Ajapong have been able to give a reasonable explanation. And Honorable Henry Kote was also able to give a reasonable explanation. Honorable Sarah Asafo didn't even appear before the committee. There was a letter to him, there was a WhatsApp message, there were calls, there was advertisement on the newspaper, there was advertisement on Facebook and other things, yet we couldn't even get him to that. So the committee came to a conclusion that by the operation of the law, if you have absent yourself 15 consecutive days for a sitting, by the operation of the law, the seat is already vacant. So on that day that we were adjourning, the issue was that it was on the order paper. And then the majority leader said, no, this thing is not supposed to be on the order paper. It was just supposed to be reporting to the Speaker, and the Speaker then announcing that the Domi Kobenya seat is vacant. And then the clerk to Parliament write to Electoral Commission to do a by-election. But rather, the Speaker is telling us that, okay, he thinks that the report should be debated, laid before Parliament, and debated for us to be done. You see, Samson, in every democracy, things happen for a reason. The 137 is actually teaching us a lot of lessons and strengthening our laws. I said so. You see, the first time, when the first Deputy Speaker was presiding, there was an issue. We went to the Supreme Court. It was interpreted. Right. He's a member of Parliament. He has a right to vote. Then the second issue is that when you absent yourself 15 days consecutively, you won't be punished. Let me just cite an example. If it was the 7th Parliament, MPP had 169 members of Parliament. NDC had 106. So if 20 of MPP members didn't come to Parliament, even for 1 year, and you send them to the Privileges Committee, and then the report is brought to Parliament, and you said the privileges should take a decision, we are 169. And you are 107. You can't win any vote against us. For that matter, you can decide not to come to Parliament for 2 years, be paid as a member of Parliament, enjoy all the privileges that come to a member of Parliament.
Ajasafo has been out of the country for over a year, has not been in this Parliament for almost all the time. Maybe except 1 or 2 times. And any time, even the time she came into the House, apart from the voting day for the Speaker, the next time was a big controversy, whether she was the one in the House or not.
Good. So something like I cited an example. So if it was the 7th Parliament that 20 of our members don't come to Parliament for 2 years, and we have majority because we're in majority by 63, and you bring it to the floor, we will vote for our people to stay. So it means that there's no check and balances. Members of Parliament are not punished for not attending to the House because that is the reason why we were elected for. So the Speaker is setting a very bad precedent for us. And I think...
But the committee decision is also a majoritarian decision.
Yes, but that is the decision of the committee. You see, what I mean
is that whoever is majority in the majority in the committee will have decided what it is.
Thank you, because you see, the point is that in the case of the Privileges Committee and in the case of absenteeism, it's a direct constitutional requirement that you should do that. We could, if it was within parliamentary setup, we could set up a different committee to look at it. At the moment, one of our colleagues, Honorable Sanid Ahafo, Ano South MP, have actually sent the case to our court.
And that also may have a potential. That may also have a potential to actually delay the process, because instead of bringing it for you to vote, now it's going to the court. I don't know if the Parliament will say, because it's in the court, we won't continue again until it's finished. And you know our court system, it could take for a while. Let me get Clara on this. Clara, what do you make of what is happening in Parliament? People are quite disappointed at the Speaker for his ruling that that decision should be left to the whole House rather than just a committee.
Thank you very much, Samson. Now, with the issue on that is, it's very clear that both sides of the divide, or all the members in Parliament, are agreed that the condition required with respect to vacation of seat and a good reason to be met has been met. So it seems they are all agreed that she has vacated her seat for over 15 days and she has not provided a reason to that effect. The issue that remains is the procedure for declaring a seat vacant. And it's quite a contentious issue because there is quite some jurisprudence on that procedure. There is jurisprudence to the effect that such a decision should not be left only to Parliament because of the potential mischief that could serve, that could achieve at some point. If you look at our Constitution, if you look at Article 97, for example, you can see that the High Court, for example, has jurisdiction to determine whether a seat is vacant or not. There is also the issue of the Asari and Attorney General when that particular issue went to court as to whether or not it is the court that should declare the seat vacant or that should be reserved onto Parliament. Because this issue is already in court, I can foresee that the issue is going to center around the procedure for declaring a seat vacant and, of course, whether the jurisdiction of the Supreme Court on that. So for that reason, I would decline making a comment on my opinions about the procedure until after the case has been determined.
Why? The Parliament is also an institution and is working with the powers given it by the states through the Constitution. So why should the court take precedence over what Parliament is doing?
Well, if the Constitution actually also provided for the court that such a situation could be brought to court. So the court has been granted jurisdiction to determine whether or not. I
mean, why the deference to the court when Parliament is seized with the issue and is good? So will Parliament stop the debate because somebody has gone to court?
That is on to Parliament to decide, to determine. But as a practicing lawyer, as a matter of education, I would provide education. But on this particular issue, the bottom line comes to the procedure for declaring a seat vacant in Parliament. And I am informed the issue is already before the court. That is why
Well, we seem to have run out of time, but Dr. Kwapong, can you say something in a minute about this? Are you as disappointed as many Ghanaians?
So I agree with Clara that 97.1 is clear, 1125 is clear. I even quickly read the standing orders of Parliament to see how reports of committees are dealt with, and I seem to get from 2123 of the standing orders that it appears that a report of a committee of Parliament has to come to the full House for debate. So I'm not a big fan of running to the court every time to try and solve some of these administrative procedural issues. But then I think on this, some clarity from the court in terms of how does the declaration of the vacancy actually occurs in terms of who does it and how, I think would be very helpful.
Okay, I can do some 30 seconds with Dr. Kwabena Nyarko Otu. Are you as disappointed as many Ghanaians are that Parliament should have just said your seat is vacant? Imagine a civil servant who has been absent for over a year, is not working and yet has to draw salary. What signals are we sending to the people?
I mean, it's a question of having two different systems for the same people. So the question I will ask the Parliament is, if it were to be one of the parliamentary service staff who has vacated post for 1 year, would they go through all these debates? I mean, these are part of the democratic ethos, the signals we send, which eventually comes to hunters.
Okay. I'm sorry, but we have run out of time. My outfit, as always, is by Habil's Couture. And you can get them at Jringa North Gate, East Legon. The number to call is 0200 84 1988. My guests have been Clara Berry Kaseti, lawyer lecturer at University of Ghana School of Law, and with the CDD. John Osai Kwapong is also political scientist, democracy and development fellow with the CDD. Dr. Kwabena Nyarko Otu is chief economist and director, Labor Research and Policy Institute at the TUC. Habib Idrisu is MP for Tolong and Deputy Majority Chief Whip. Mona Korte is Managing Partner, BVM Advisory Services, and former Deputy Minister of Finance. I'm Samson Lardy Anyenini. Thank you so very much for your time. We'll come your way next week with another edition of Newsfile, God willing. Have a good afternoon.